Okay, welcome to another Jenkins X Office Hours. There's 15 people on the call now. Brilliant. So I think we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about JX Boot and see if we can get any feedback from people that have been using it, find out what areas we're missing and we need to be focusing and adding to, and make sure we got any issues raised for anything that's missing. And Kara's going to give us a little update and some interesting things that's coming up as well from a community point of view, which will hopefully be interesting people. And last minute, James to the rescue for some demos as well, which is going to blow us away with. So should we just jump straight into it? Victor, you've been trying out JX Boot. How's it been going for you?
I mean, it fails. So the trouble I have is, so some things are not polished. I understand that we're getting there. Like Vault, for example, is continuously failing in my case. And if I change the namespace where Jenkins X is running, it simply doesn't work. But those are all the issues. I'm much more concerned about how does it work. The point behind Jenkins X Boot is to be able to change stuff, but either I'm not very bright or I don't understand how to change those things, like add additional charts to it, and what are all the files that are inside the repository, and why if I use JX Boot, why will the whole open source team be approver of my repositories?
So that was just 3 or 4 really good things. So let me just write those down quickly. And we haven't. I mean, we've got some docs on JX Boot, and I know people have been going through, and people need to be adding some more experiences around it. I think the specific use case you said there was a cracking one. How do you add more charts? And yeah, we probably don't have any. I haven't looked yet. This is my fault, but probably don't have some documentation around that. So I'm kind of madly making notes, adding charts. As far as customizing things,
so just a quick answer. The app extension stuff, the JX Add app, generates pull requests on your GitOps repository. So whether using JX install with GitOps enabled or using JX Boot, they both use the same directory tree structure. So if you want to add a new app to something that's booted, use JX Add app, and that basically generates a pull request to add the new chart and the new values YAML and all that malarkey into your Git repository. So that piece hasn't changed at all. The app extension model is identical. What really has changed is JX install has changed. The JX Boot replaces JX install. And the quick answer, I mean, it's quite a long story, but the quick answer is, rather than having 500 different CLI arguments and nobody knew what any of them were, and they're really easy to get wrong, we now have a JX requirement YAML file that has all the common things in there. So if you want to use Vault or not, or you want to switch between Prow or Jenkins or Lighthouse, or you want to specify what environments you want to create, or you want to specify which buckets to use, or whatever, there's a single type safe validated YAML file. Now, we've not documented very well. We've still yet to generate a schema for it, so you don't get ID completion in IntelliJ or VS Code yet, which will be nice. It'd be nice to generate a schema with reference docs so you can see what all the values are and what you can use for it and stuff. But at least it's a start along that journey of a gazillion different CLI arguments and nobody really ever knew what they were. Also, if you look at JX install, there's a whole range of really confusing CLI arguments around. Are you using Tiller or not? Or are you disabling the initialization of Tiller? There was like 20 flags just for Helm. So we've definitely simplified things, but we definitely need more docs for sure.
Yeah, and one of the good things that you mentioned as well, James, with GitOps enabled as well, doing the add app, because of course then you can see the change being presented to you in the pull request, and it's really still quite nice. You can see the charts being added and everything. So all that's still the same as well. So with the major thing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Victor, but would the main thing be around documentation?
Yeah, in my case, it would be around document. I mean, issues come in, then they're solved. I'm not worried about those. It's more like documentation. I mean, there's a bunch of files there. which I'm not sure which ones should be editable by us, and if they are, kind of how. I mean, I know I can read the code and then figure it out, but I guess that not everybody will do that, right?
I wonder if we should raise an issue on the doc site and just say docs, improving docs for boot, and just see if we can get people to dump some areas and some ideas of what they'd like to know more about, and we can start, taking one by one and start improving.
I mean, basically, the requirements file is the one that you may want to edit. You shouldn't need to edit anything else, right? JX Boot should manage everything else for you. You shouldn't have to touch anything else. JX requirements YAML is the file you might want to tweak, because that's your requirements. That's like what Kubernetes cluster you're using, what zone, what project, what buckets, what name of cluster, what Git repositories do you want to use for environments? Do you want to use environments? Do you want to use storage? That's basically the thing you edit. Everything else is kind of implementation detail. It might be nice, you might want to tweak some of that stuff at some point, but it's kind of more implementation detail than something users should really mess with.
And with that tooltip IDE completion, if we get schema generated, then that might help with that. Yeah.
Cool.
Terry, did you have any questions for you? Because I know you're thinking about looking at, because you're still using the traditional approach. Do you have any questions about that? Any of that, or is it a bit too early for you? Or
so at the moment, I've been holding off until we're at a point where we've got things like TLS and vaults all working, because our baseline is a particular capability. So until we get to that stage, there's not too much that I can play with.
So. Cosmin, are you around? Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm here. So it's close to working. We have a BDD test right now. It's almost done. I just need to sort out one last issue. So basically, we plan to have a BDD test end-to-end for everything, like have a proper domain registered with Google Cloud Zone, and then we have Serve Manager, external DNS, and Vault. Everything is kind of tested end-to-end every time we release boot config. So yeah, that's close to be done.
Awesome. So maybe we can do pop something on the channel, dev channel or something, or maybe even something on Twitter or something once that's done, and ready for
just, are you using TLS also for applications currently with Serve Manager?
So with the question, so the question would be, Terry, TLS, are you needing the TLS for applications that are deployed into staging and production, or is it just for the initial, the dev environment that we have created?
Yeah, so we're expecting to be able to use it everywhere. So.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one more issue for that we need to fix. Yeah. Okay, I let you know when everything is fixed and you can try it out.
I was just going to very briefly, I've just shared my screen. Can you see it? Can you see a browser window?
No. Oh, yes. Sorry, I was looking wrong. Yes.
I was just going to show you the requirement. If you'll click on the requirements page in the docs URL that I just posted into Slack, I've added a bit of docs on. Here's how you configure the different secrets, Vault or local storage. So this is JX requirements, this bits of YAML. Here's how you configure the different webhooks. There's Pro, there's Lighthouse, and well, we don't show you an example of Jenkins, but that's the line you use to use Jenkins server. And then here's how you do the storage. Do you want to use cloud storage for logs, reports, or repositories? And then here's a little bit of ingress docs that if you want a specific domain name, if you want to use external DNS or not, there's a few little examples. And then there's a little example of using TLS where there's an explicit domain, there's external DNS is enabled, a TLS email, and enable TLS and use production. So it's not brilliant, but there's some examples of what the requirements should look like if you want to use these different kind of flavors.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, sorry to stitch you up, Gareth, but you've been using this quite a bit over the last couple, 100 times or something. You've been some clusters you've been building out.
Yeah, slightly different from the OSS side. But yeah, we're using a very similar config, looking at booting it with TLS enabled external DNS, Cert Manager, and Vault all in one go, and that's working really nicely. It is, I think, to get it, you kind of do need to enable a number of things all in one go at the start, which I think possibly should improve the docs around that. But yeah, we've got single sign-on and everything else working. It's been very stable, and with James's new feature to rerun boot from a particular stage, which I think he's going to demo quite soon, that's going to be really helpful as well.
Yeah, I must admit, my experiences of amending it, I'd much prefer being able to see what's there and being able just to keep running things. We did a couple of demos, live demos recently, where on stage actually requesting, I mean, Cara, you were there, right? We're requesting a certificate from this, Let's Encrypt, and it just, switching from staging to the production service from Let's Encrypt, and it's, within one switch of a Boolean, and it went and it worked. It's just there. It ran the install again, and it's just changed all the ingress rules. It's updated the secrets, Cert Manager, everything.
Webhooks as well.
Webhooks, yeah. So it's just those things that it's having that idempotent approach to it. It's quite nice. Much more friendly. Yeah. Do we want to, Cara? Did you want to give a bit of a quick? What is a Hacktoberfest?
So some of you may have heard of Hacktoberfest. It's every October. I think it's been running for 5 years now. DigitalOcean is one of the main sponsors for it, but it's to encourage more open source participation, particularly for people who are new to open source. But should you all wish, you can sign up and get a t-shirt too after 5 pull requests. But I think for the group here, I would like you to know that Jenkins X will be participating this year, and what we'll be doing is we'll be labeling good first issues with the additional label Hacktoberfest. So if you would like to support this and to support people new to the project, you can make additional good first issues as you see them. You can spec out the good first issues that are there a little bit more to make them easier and more accessible to new people. And if you really want to be involved, you can put your name on a good first issue as someone to, be contacted or pinged if someone has more questions and would like to work on it. So essentially volunteering for a bit of a mentorship role, but hopefully it wouldn't take up too much of your time.
That sounds awesome. And I guess there's an element of trying to help people as they're going along. Just, I guess you don't have to sign up yourself for it, but if you see people trying to do something, then maybe just nudge them along or help them out on the pull request reviews or anything.
Yes, and of course we'll be telling people about the Slack channels as well. So if you see more new people in the dev Slack channel, that would be really great to jump in and answer their questions and help them.
Awesome, cool. Before we pass over to James, was there any other updates you wanted to give from a community point of view?
Nothing that I can say right now, but in a few weeks there will be more.
Oh, sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very suspicious as well. Yeah, awesome. Build up the excitement. James, thank you. By the way, James has just stepped in like literally 1 minute before and just helped us out here. So thank you. Hats off to you.
I'm kind of used to last minute demos. So I was just going to demo a couple of things. They're fairly minor things, but a couple of things that we've been working on lately in Jenkins X. Can you see my screens, by the way? There should be a couple of terminals. Yeah. So one of the things I love about Jenkins X is we keep learning new approaches, new things, new issues, new ways of solving problems. One thing we never really realized was a problem was Kubernetes itself, right? As soon as you use Kubernetes, you use an ingress controller and use external DNS, and then you use Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, you've got 50 charts and they're all changing all the time. And that makes everything unstable. So we realized fairly early on we need this thing called version streams, which if I pop in the docs, I'll show you where this is. We had a thing called a version stream. Pop there, version stream. And you can read about all that later at your leisure. So we had a thing called a version stream, which is really just a simple Git repository of what are all the versions of all the charts. The canonical way of using Helm is you say, I want to install Nginx. And it says, okay, here's the latest one we found on the internet for you, which is great when you're playing around. But when you're working with production, you don't want to use the latest on the internet. You want to use the latest that has been tested to work in your environment. So we started to lock down things in the version stream. And the first thing we did was charts, which worked really, really well. So we've gone through, if you look inside the version stream Git repository, so this is the version stream Git repository, all the version stream is the Git repository with source code inside, which is then versioned. And then you can tie yourself to a specific version of the version stream. And the version stream is basically a bag of versions of things. So if you look in the charts folder, the charts folder is a folder of different versions of different charts in different chart repositories. And you notice there's all these different names. Let me make this a bit bigger. There's all these different names. There's JetStack, there's Bitnami, there's Flagger, there's Stable is the public Helm chart repository. And if you look inside a specific chart repository, for example, here's all the Jenkins X charts. If we pick something at random, let's say Jenkins X platform, and each name of chart has a little blob of YAML which has where does this chart come from, what's its source code, and what's the current version number. So it's just a way for us to lock down the version we know works. So if any of these charts are released, we know that's great. And if you want to use that, you add your own, but we know which version has been tested with Jenkins X and we know what version works there. So for example, if I look in the stable folder, let's take certain manage, external DNS. Oh, Nginx is the one I was talking about. Let's use Nginx. This is the version of Nginx that we've tested and we know it works. And then whenever any of these things come out and there's a new version, we generate a pull request on this version repo, run all our BDD tests and check things all work. Starting with to lock down charts has been a huge boon to Jenkins X. We've had huge stability improvements because of that. And we've always wanted to take that on and then lock down everything, basically. Charts, images, binaries, build packs, quick starts, and so on and so forth. So the first thing I'll mention first is we've started to add packages. So this has been around a little while, so packages. Here are all the packages. So if I look at, say, Git, this is a new thing that's just happened. We tried this a little while ago and it didn't work, so we backed it out. And it's just come back again this week. We now lock down Git and we say it's got to be 2.15 or later. Up to version 3, we've no idea what version 3 is ever going to be. So that's an upper limit so that we barf if you've got version 3 because it doesn't even exist yet. So we've got a version range here that says we need at least 2.15. And if you look at kubectl, we've got a similar thing. We've got a version range that says it's got to be at least 1.13, but before 2, because who knows what 2 is going to be. And then we have a command line. You can run this jx step verify packages. You can run this whenever you like to verify your packages. And it basically looks in the version stream and finds out, in this case, Git is old. So it's found Git is 2.12.1. And that's too old, so it's barfing that we need 2.15 on later. So we've got new valid, now I've got a shell that has an old Git. If I do Git version, I've cheated. This is the one that's got the real Git. There we go, that's a real Git. So if I do jx step version here, sorry, jx step verify packages, we should have everything's good. There we go. Although actually my JX is old because I'm using a development environment of JX, so it's barfing about the JX version. So that's the other thing I was going to mention. We've recently locked down Git, but we've also locked down JX itself. We've had all kinds of bugs and issues with people using old version of Git. Old version of Git don't support various Git flags that we're used to, so you get all sorts of random failures. So locking down Git has been a good one. So hopefully that'll fix lots of issues. Locking down JX is another challenge. What we've traditionally done, which is not awesome, what we've traditionally done is we're releasing JX all the time, and then every time we release the new JX binary, we build lots of other downstream things like the builder images and Helm charts and various other things. And then we generate a pull request on the version stream, and then we verify all those things are valid. And then when they're valid, we merge to the version stream. The problem is on github.com, you can download the latest, greatest JX that we haven't yet verified. So now we use the version stream to verify which version of JX to use, which is great because now we can lock down the version of JX in the version stream. And then it doesn't matter that we're doing new JX releases. your version stream locks down on an older version. And you can modify your version stream to use whatever version you like, right? The version stream is just a Git repository, so you can fork it and you can move that JX version yourself if you really want, forwards or backwards. So one of the changes we're now making is in the version stream. If I look in, we have this thing called the dependency matrix. It's a slightly long story. Maybe we could do a demo of that in another office hours. We've got all of these commands for generating pull requests between repositories, which are awesome that Pete's done. Maybe Pete, you could do a demo next time. And what we do is we update this dependency matrix. And this dependency matrix is the thing that, if ever you've looked at the release notes, let's try the builders package. If you look at any of the release notes in any of our repositories, let's hope this works now, I'm mentioning it. If you look at the changelog, you can see when we generate the changelog, we generate which versions of which dependencies have changed from which to which. So that from all the release notes of something, you can see, in this case, JX has changed from this version to this version in that builder's release. Or if we look at Jenkins X platform, you can see, and we'll look at the releases. Oh, it's not working there. Damn! Okay, it used to work. But the idea is we want to generate good release notes that shows which versions of which dependencies have changed, so that as a JX binary gets upgraded in a builder's release, and a builder's release gets changed in the chart, and the chart gets changed in the platform, and the platform gets changed in the version stream, we want that traceability of which versions changed where. So in the version stream, in the matrix YAML, we have this big YAML that has, for example, this is the JX binary source repository, and this is the version we want to lock down in the version stream. So we're using the version stream to lock down the version. Was there a question there, by the way?
Hey, James, yeah, I was going to ask, how does this relate to the version that's coming through, for example, with the Homebrew package?
That's a great question. So Homebrew has a Git repository, again, of what version is the latest. What we're basically doing is we're ignoring the version that Homebrew tells us is the latest. So if you do JX version, it's going to, hopefully, it's going to say there's a new version, 2.5.92. Do you want to upgrade to that? Yes, no. Now that 2.5.20592, that's coming from the version stream. So that's not coming from the latest in Brew, and that's not coming from the latest on GitHub. If you do a Brew install, typically that's been the latest, greatest version. Now, one thing we're just in the middle of doing and we've not quite done yet, I think, Kai, you were working on this lately. What we want to do is once the version stream is updated to a new version of JX, at that point, we want to update the website to say what version to download. And at that point, we want to mark on the JX website what is the latest release, and everything else is like a trial or a pre-release. And we also want to update Brew after this. So we haven't quite done that yet. We're in the process of doing that, because what we want to do is go, this new version is good, change the version stream. Once that merges to master, that then updates Brew, and that then updates the website, and that updates everything else. But just for any other reason, if you do JX version, it will upgrade to the version that's in the version stream. So one common issue a lot of folks have hit is one person that installs Jenkins X, and then they run boot or whatever, or they install a cluster, and someone else goes, I'm going to install Jenkins X, and they get some random new version, and everyone in your team has a totally different random version. At least now, if everybody does JX version, it will sync everyone on the same version. And then if anybody does JX boot to upgrade, or uses JX boot to upgrade a new version, the version stream will upgrade, and then everyone will be prompted to upgrade together. So it's a way of trying to lock everyone down to the same version of JX and the same range of kubectl and the same range of Git. Because it's, and Helm as well, actually, I should mention. These 4 binaries are so crucial and totally break your experience if you have different random versions. So we're trying to kind of nudge everyone together. Now, in this case, you can say no, and it doesn't upgrade. So you can opt out of upgrading, but we're trying to nudge everyone along to upgrade. So similarly, when you do a JX boot, the JX boot will do the same thing. When you run JX boot to boot up a cluster, it validates Git, and it does all that kind of stuff. Oh, it says, warning, I'm not using TLS, so I'm a bad man. But now it's going to do the same kind of thing. Do you want to upgrade JX? And you say, oh, okay then. So if you hit return, it's going to upgrade JX. Well, it would do if I wasn't using a development build. So we're basically trying to lock everything down. One thing another thing I should mention, by the way, if I pop back to the version stream. We've recently just added the first bit of work to lock down quick starts. So quick starts, if you've ever used JX create quick start, what it normally does, if I do kubectl, let me clear that screen. Kubectl gets mdev -o YAML pipe into more. So this is the current development environment, which if I kind of gradually scroll down, you see this little bit of YAML here. This is where it's going to load the quick start locations from. So basically the development environment has these team settings, which are blob of YAML that say where's your build packs, what scheduler to use, which is also with prow-config, what Docker registry to use by default, what's your default Docker server, what's your default import mode. You might notice I'm using Jenkins here, by the way. The eagle-eyed people here will notice I'm actually using Jenkins, not prow with boot, but I'll talk about that in a minute. And here's where the quick starts come from. So by default, we've been using this config to say, look in this GitHub organization, query the GitHub organization for all the repositories there, and that's what you're going to use for quick starts, which is great for discovering dynamically quick starts. The downside is that means everyone's on master of whatever's in github.com, which we've not tested that. So we don't know, if you just add a new Git repository into the quick starts org, who knows if it's going to work, right? So we want to lock everything down and know everything's green before we give it to users by default. So we've now got a new quickstart.yaml, which is part of the version stream. And this quickstart.yaml, you might notice these versions. We version every quick start using the git shar of the Git repository of the quick start. So each of these quick starts are in GitHub, right? So we have a quick start in GitHub. Each of them is now stored as a URL to download. It's got the language, like that one's TypeScript, this one's C#. That's the name of the repository. This is where we download it from, and this is the version. And then we have a JX step, which generates this pull request. So whenever you create a new quick start, whenever you modify a quick start, if you run this JX step, it will generate an updated pull request to change the version stream, which we can then run BDD tests on. I can show you the command if you're interested. If we go to documentation, CLI, and then we have a JX step. I wish I could find this quicker. JX step. Well, let me do search. Step create pull request.
That's fine.
I do that search. Yeah. Yeah, why do JX step create quick start? Oh, why did I do that before? That's awesome. Okay, so there we go. There's the command. So JX step create pull request quick starts. If you run this command, it will generate a pull request against your version stream. If there's any quick start discovered that's either changed version or a new one's been added. It then does a pull request against the version stream. You can then run all your BDD tests against the version stream, check those quick starts all work. If they do, you merge it, and then everyone then gets those. Well, when everyone moves to that version of the version stream, everyone gets those quick starts. So we've basically going through, we've almost locked everything down now, where everything's locked down in the version stream, and then you can move the version stream ahead when you're ready. And then we do our own moving of the version stream when our BDD tests pass. We have quite a lot of BDD tests at the minute, by the way. Jenkins, oh, I'm there. Jenkins X version stream. If we click on pull requests, and we click on the last one that just merged, this one. If you have a look yourself, this is the last pull request, which updated a bunch of versions in our version stream. If you click on view details, you'll see all the BDD tests we're testing. So we're testing Lighthouse with GitHub, Lighthouse with GitHub Enterprise, boot with local storage secrets, boot with Vault, GitOps without. All the rest of them don't use boot. GitOps with traditional JX installed, NG for and static Jenkins and Tecton and died until. And we've got more and more BDD tests coming. Cosme mentioned we're going to do TLS BDD test to test with using external DNS and Cert Manager, installing everything with boot and do a BDD test for that. We're really close to a BDD test for Bitbucket Server with boot. And we're close to having a BDD test for boot and Jenkins, by the way. So I've got a boot here, which I just before the call I did JX boot, and I'll leave it running while we're doing this demo. And basically, if I look at my JX requirements, .yaml, at the end I have webhook Jenkins, and basically webhook Jenkins now works, which means if you want to use a static Jenkins, you can use boot to configure it all. Let me just say no for that. And it does work. obviously we prefer Tecton these days. It's much nicer, it's simpler, it's leaner, it's meaner, it's more cloud native. But if you really want to use Boot and Jenkins, that's now supported. Lighthouse is supported, Prowl supported, Jenkins is supported, Vault supported or not, external DNS or not, cert manager or not, storage or not. So we've tried to get almost every permutation in there, but we still have more work to do, obviously making it easy for people to understand what to do to change these configurations. And we still have more work on the TLS side of things. There's still a few permutations of the work, like Cosme mentioned. If you enable TLS, it works. A custom domain TLS certs, that all works. But what doesn't work yet is preview environments and staging doesn't use the same, the correct tokens and certs and stuff. Sorry, that was quite a long ramble. Any questions about anything you just saw?
Yeah, so obviously the ML quick starts are using a separate organization for those quick starts. Have we checked that that's still working under the new model?
It should all be fine. By the way, I made another change, which is technically a simple change, but hopefully it hasn't broken anything. When you do JX quick start, what we used to do, because we had a long-standing issue, about a year ago, we used to pick a quick start, then you pick a name, and then when you were picking the Git repository, you might change the name, and it all got a bit kind of weird. So then we changed the code. So the first thing we did was pick a Git repository before you knew what you're going to make. I made a slight change. So the first thing you do is pick a quick start. So now you pick a quick start first. So if I do like node, then it goes, right, now we're going to create a Git repository. So there's a slight change gone in recently, which hopefully hasn't broken any of the ML stuff. That JX create quick start, the first thing it does is ask you for a quick start. Then it does the Git stuff, just because it's a slightly cleaner UX. Because sometimes I'd create a quick start and then I was thinking, I've given my project a name and I'm not sure what I'm making yet. Or I might change my mind after the quick start. But one thing we might want to do is, if you're making your own quick starts or you're hosting your own like machine learning quick starts somewhere, we might want to support different repositories for, well, what we could do is you could fork the version stream and manage your quick starts in the same way by adding to this quick starts YAML and add all the machine learning stuff there and version them yourself. You could generate pull requests on those quick starts and we could run the BDD tests on our cluster if you like, or you could manage your own version stream. One thing that is slightly concerning is do we all end up with a million forks of the version stream when really, if you just want to manage the versions of the quick starts, might we want to have another version stream just for a set of quick starts? So that, for example, you could have a Git repository that just manages the versions of your quick starts and you don't have to fork any of the version stream. So we might want to add the ability for the versions of quick starts to come from different quick start version streams, which might make everything easier to manage. Right now, we've just been using one big version stream for everything, which I think for the open source project is good, and for the Jenkins distribution from the Jenkins X distribution from CloudBees, that's good. But for example, you, Terry, managing the machine learning quick starts, it might be better if you had your own repository that you owned without having to fork everything, just to avoid like merge conflicts and crazy.
Yeah, I think we probably need to take a look at how all of that stuff works and see if there are some changes we might want to make in the future. For example, one of the things that we've encountered is that obviously at the moment all the quick start repositories are public, but where teams want to have quick starts for internal source code, then they need to create a private repository to do that in, and that actually requires them to create a commercial organization just to hold the quick starts. So you end up having to pay for more than one organization, which is not expensive, but it annoys administrators.
Yeah, while I was looking at this code, I was tempted to add that in, but I was just a bit busy doing a bunch of other things at the time. But it might be nice to add a flag here, private true. And if private is true, then we know that when we're creating a quick start, we actually need to create a Git token and get a Git token for wherever this code lives and pass the Git token along. If we add a flag, if a quick start is private or not, we don't have, we could share one organization could have some private things and some public things. And we know if it's private, we have to use a token. If it's public, you can just download that without a token. And so all of our default quick starts, they're all public, so we don't need a token to download them. But it'd be nice to have a flag here that says this is private, so then you have to use a token to download it because otherwise you can't even see the repository and everything. So
Yeah.
it would be nice to add private quick starts as a thing. Another thing I was going to mention, by the way, is what was that command I just did? There we go, that one. We might want to extend this quick start locations to add another field here to say what's the version stream Git repository, or where's the YAML file that's got all the versions of these quick starts. So one thing is to discover them, but you could have your own repository or file somewhere on the internet that's got, this is the versions of the quick starts in your organizations that you can then manage in a similar way we manage the version stream. You can have CI/CD. Whenever you change a quick start, you can run on your pipelines and is it valid? Yes, it is. And then you do a pull request on the Git repository and stuff. So we might want to extend this to add like mini version streams, if you like. So you can have your own mini version stream where you have a single place where you version all the quick starts and check they all work before you give it to your team. So I don't think either of those two things are huge amounts of work, but I would like that to happen fairly soon, because I love the idea that teams can manage their own quick starts. I think that's awesome. But we want real CI/CD on those. We don't just want everyone on a snapshot and then the quick starts might work, you know.
Just on that, James, like that might be another place we might be able to use that is with apps. If we were to do a user kind of override version stream, you could have the main Jenkins X version stream, and then a user generated version stream that would have a stream of like your app versions, quick start versions, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we could use the global version stream, right? We could, and maybe we make it easier. For example, Terry, if you want to own and manage testing the machine learning quick starts, maybe we could figure out a way so that you could do the test, the VDD test, and then if your test says green, then we merge it into our version stream or whatever. So maybe a global version stream isn't such a bad thing, but it's more, could we make the testing federated so different people could own the testing of the things? Because that's really all we care about. If it's green, we can merge it into our global version stream. It's more complicated that if it's a private Git repository and we can't see it.
Yeah.
Maybe decentralizing that's simpler. I'm not sure. One thing I like about the central version stream is it means we can test everything whenever we change anything. As things get more and more federated, it gets harder to go. For example, if we change the JX binary, does that break a machine learning quick start? We wouldn't be able to do that test in our version stream if everything's fragmented. So I do like centralized version stream, but I think we need to support both approaches, really. But yes.
Yeah. So the other question that occurred to me is, how are we currently managing the drift between the JX CLI version and the version that's deployed in the builders?
That's a great question. I'm actually writing some code. Well, I was 2 hours ago before meeting started writing some code. I've got 2 reports I'm running. One that goes through all of the charts in the version stream and generates all the Docker images that are referenced in any of the charts. And then another one is to go through all of the images in the charts or in the version stream and basically run a job with all of those images inside to suck out all of the versions of, say, JX, kubectl, Git, Helm, Helm 3, all of the versions we want to look inside, and then just build a big matrix so we can see, well, we can basically find out, like, is everyone using the same version of Helm? Is everyone using the same version of kubectl? Are we accidentally using different versions of GX in different builders or pipelines or whatever? Because this is a problem we have ourselves. We have these dependency matrices, which are great, but we have no way of testing, are they actually real? Like, we think these are all the versions of everything, but are they really those versions in there? And we keep finding it's so easy to think you're on the same version of something, and there's a tag somewhere in a chart, or there's a values.yaml that overrides a version or something. So we found ourselves, we've often got lots of versions of JX in different pipelines. And we basically want a way of testing and reporting, to start with reporting on it, but ultimately failing tests if they're different. What we really would like at some point is to say a version stream is only green when there's one JX everywhere. We don't want two versions of JX, one in Python and one in C or something or whatever. Or, we kind of want to make sure we consistently use one version of everything everywhere, because otherwise it's just a version nightmare. And right now it's way too easy to accidentally, like I thought I upgraded Helm 3's binary the other day, and Gareth spotted there was a line, and then the next line the Docker file overwrote the thing I thought I just changed. So it's so easy to mess up an image, right? And we need a way of testing, does the image really have what we think we put in it? So I'm fairly close to a JX step that does that. Hopefully the next couple of days I can submit the pull request, and then I'd like to get that on the website as a report that goes for a single version stream. Here's some HTML, here's all the charts, here's all the versions of all the stuff in all of them, so that you can see for certain image you're using, what is the JX. I mean, I find this myself. I'm running a pipeline and I know the builder image, but I've literally no clue what's in it. I want a simple way that we can do that kind of navigation really, because it's hard to know. And plus, if you want to do this for Python or for some of the ML tools using or whatever it is, we should be able to extend this report to do any form of version checking, because it's so useful.
Yeah, I think we need to think about how we can get to a situation where it's easy to tell when a particular feature release has made it into an actual production release. Because at the moment there's a bit of a blind window between a JX release being built, and then that version of JX making it into the real world.
Is that so? I wonder, Kai, is that's some of the stuff you've been on and off looking at?
So
yeah, go on.
I don't think that's related to how we mark items as release, but I think now that the JX step create pull, I think it's pull request, where we can update different packages and different items from different repositories, that should hopefully not be the issue any longer. But I think what James Strachan's mentioning, that we can reconcile those versions inside the version stream. What we should now be seeing is that the builder's versions should contain the correct version of JX that is associated with the JX version inside the version stream. But what we can't be sure, what we can't determine is whether we can be sure of that until we have a reconciliation report against the version stream version, if that makes sense, Terry.
Yeah, it's the reconciliation I'm working on right now that goes, we think these are all consistent, but actually are there? And can we find a place that it's not consistent because of Helm or values YAML or weird stuff? By the way, I just wanted to big up the stuff Pete's done lately. About 3 years ago, we wrote this thing called UpdateBot, and it was kind of crappy, and it was Java, and it was kind of horrible. Pete's basically rewritten it from scratch and go, and it's awesome. And we basically have all of these commands: JX step create pull request, or you can type PR if you prefer, JX step create PR. And then we've got the Brew version, the chart version, the Docker version, the Go version for Go modules, make, quick starts, as we mentioned, regular expression repositories, which is a way of mirroring all of your source repositories from in a cluster into your GitOps stuff. Versions is the one we use to update versions of charts or Docker images or whatever. But it's really easy if you have any kind of pull request you want to generate, like you could do a Node.js version or a Maven one or whatever it is. It's really easy just to extend the base code and just write your own little modifying function. And this automatically basically generates a pull request on the source repository if it's required. But it also does all of this. It doesn't just generate the pull request, it also does all of the linking. So we know which source repository generated the pull request and which downstream repository. And it also manages these dependency matrices. So you know which upstream repository created the pull request downstream, so we can do the traceability, which is really, really powerful. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this stuff. So this is the stuff we're using right now, that when we do a JX release, this generates pull requests on charts or Docker images or quick starts or website or whatever. So this is now our UpdateBot replacement, if you like.
But this does kind of a localized reconciliation as well, James. So you probably know already, but if more than one thing tries to update the repository with a version of something and they mismatch, it will error. It will say, well, hang on, something else has updated this here, and I'm trying to update it to this version, and it will error on that occasion, so that you won't have two different versions referenced within the same repository of a package. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So honestly, thank you, James, for padding for that. That was good. We've got 10 minutes left. I don't know. I'm just looking around. Just thought everyone's looking in trepidation. But David Cotton, if you're there, I wondered if you wanted to. Well, yes, you're there. Wondered if you just. There's tons of amazing work that's been done with lots of bug fixing lately. Do you know roughly how many issues have been fixed in the last 2 weeks? I think I heard a report lately.
Yeah, there's quite a lot, really. Can't remember the exact numbers, but I think there was something in the region of over 100.
123.
Yeah, there you go. It was something like that over the last 4 weeks, I think it was. But yeah, we're using Jenkins X internally, and it's like from a stability point of view, it's like there's been some really, really good bug fixes going in, and especially around the likes of TLS usage and Vault. We've improved documentation around some of that stuff quite a bit as well, which has been really, really helpful. And the other thing that we're currently working on is an automated upgrade process for systems that have been installed using boot. So that's in progress, and the next thing we're going to be doing with that is actually covering it with BDD tests, so that we certify that the upgrade has been successful between one version and the other.
It's fantastic stuff. Seeing that work going through has been quite something. So hats off to the people that have been working on that. It's just chugging away and working through them. It's been great. But I think one of the other things as well to say that, that at one point there were like 700 issues, and the number goes down, and then it might spike again. But we're working through those, and I really want to guess it's if you see something, let's raise it as an issue. Maybe if you want more urgency or more eyes on it, more focus. If you're not getting the focus, then ping us on Slack, and we'll get to it. But yeah, just want to say, David, cracking stuff that's been happening there.
Yeah, you're going to have to pick up the pace on writing new bugs now.
That should be quite easy, I think.
Well played. Is there any more updates from anybody at all? Any questions, any thoughts? All right. Well, should we leave it there then? That was a good session. Again, thanks to James for sorting that, and also as well the involvement for everybody as well. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Cheers, everyone.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.